Captain Leo sat alone in the dimly lit hallway of the old space station. His boots echoed as he walked, the sound bouncing off the rusted walls. The station was falling apart, he could feel it in his bones. Once a proud outpost for traders and travelers, it was now a graveyard of forgotten dreams. The air was thin and cold, a perfect match for Leo's mood. His fingers clutched his last few credits tightly in his pocket. But even they wouldn't be enough to get him off this place. The station had been his home for the past few months. He had come here to make a living, trading, fixing ships, doing odd jobs, but those days were long gone. The job market was shrinking, and the station itself was on its last legs. It wasn't long before Leo realized he was stuck. His ship was grounded for repairs he couldn't afford, and his supplies were running out. The last thing he had to his name was a small stash of credits, but even those wouldn't last long. As Leo walked past the empty hallways, his mind wandered. The stars outside the station's viewports were distant and cold. He could almost hear the hum of his ship calling to him. His fingers brushed the cold metal of the walls as he walked, wishing he could escape this place. But then, something caught his eye. At the end of the hallway, near the entrance to the docking bay, there was something unusual. It was a large cryogenic pod, sitting alone in the middle of the corridor. Most of the pods were either empty or malfunctioning, abandoned long ago by traders or travelers who never came back. But this one was different. The faint glow of blue light leaked out from around its edges, casting strange shadows on the floor. Leo stepped closer, his curiosity pulling him in despite the chill running up his spine. As he approached, he saw a strange figure inside the pod, a girl. Or at least, that's what it looked like at first. Her skin was a soft glowing blue, like the light of distant stars, and her eyes were shut tight, as though she were in some sort of deep sleep. He paused. Something didn't feel right. The pod was sealed tightly, the markings on its side warning of danger. Leo could read the warning signs, even though he wasn't sure what kind of danger they meant. It wasn't uncommon for stations like this to house dangerous cargo, often items that were better off left forgotten. But something about this girl. It felt different. Cryolock engaged, the pod system beeped, but Leo didn't let that stop him. His instincts told him to be cautious, but something about the girl's face, frozen in sleep, stirred a sense of urgency inside him. She needed help. He reached into his jacket pocket, his fingers brushing against the cold metal of his remaining credits. They were barely enough for a meal, let alone the repairs his ship needed. He hesitated, weighing the decision in his mind. But when he looked back at the girl, lying there so still, something inside him snapped. He couldn't leave her. Not here. Not like this. Leo punched in the code to the pod's control panel and waited. The screen flashed a warning, insufficient funds. His heart sank. He had no way of getting the girl out unless he could pay for the required energy cells. But there was no time to waste. The station was dying, and he could feel it. The pressure in the air was changing, the hum of the station's failing systems more urgent now. The room felt colder. Without thinking, Leo dug into his pocket and pulled out the last of his credits. He punched in the numbers, hoping against hope that this would be enough. The screen flickered for a moment, and then the pod systems came online. The cryo chamber hissed open, and the girl slowly began to stir. Her breathing was shallow at first, but as the pod warmed, she began to move. Slowly, her hands twitched and her eyelids fluttered. Leo watched, frozen, as her blue eyes slowly opened, focusing on him with an intensity that took him by surprise. He stepped back, unsure of what to do next. The girl didn't say anything at first. She simply stared at him, blinking in confusion. She seemed to be taking in her surroundings, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. Leo took another step back, his hand hovering near his gun, though he had no intention of using it. The girl looked weak, almost fragile. She was unlike any human he had ever seen. She opened her mouth, But only a few words escaped, words Leo didn't understand. They were in a language he had never heard before, soft but urgent. The girl's voice shook with each breath she took, and it was clear she was trying to communicate, but the words didn't make sense. Leo knelt down, trying to make himself as unthreatening as possible. Hey, it's okay, he said, trying to speak gently. I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe now. The girl didn't seem to hear him. Instead, she reached out with one trembling hand, touching the side of the pod like she was trying to understand what had happened to her. She looked at Leo again, her eyes wide with fear. She seemed confused, lost. As if she didn't know who she was or where she was. Leo's mind raced. Who was she? Where had she come from? What was this strange technology? And most importantly, why had she been left frozen in that pod? Before he could ask another question, the girl whispered one word, her voice barely audible but filled with terror. Escape. The station seemed to tremble again, as if on cue. Leo glanced around, realizing that something had changed. The station wasn't just falling apart, it was under threat. Something was coming. And he had no idea what. He helped the girl to her feet, her body shaking, her eyes darting around in fear. It was clear she was scared of him, scared of the station, and most of all, scared of something else. Leo's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the girl take her first shaky steps out of the cryopod. Her blue skin seemed to glow in the dim light of the station, but her trembling body couldn't hide the fear that filled her eyes. She was disoriented, lost, and it was clear that she had no idea where she was or what was happening. For a moment, Leo stood frozen, unsure of what to do. He had never been good with people, let alone with strange alien species. And this girl, this alien girl, was unlike anything he had ever encountered. She wasn't just strange, she was an enigma, a mystery that begged for answers. But Leo didn't know if he was the one capable of solving it. The girl took another shaky step forward, her bare feet scraping against the cold metal floor. Her wide eyes scanned the room, her breathing shallow, almost erratic. Then she looked at Leo, meeting his gaze for the first time since her awakening. For a split second, Leo saw the fear in her eyes shift to something else, something darker. It was as though she were trying to make sense of him, of everything around her. But she couldn't. Not yet. Hey, Leo said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. It's okay. You're safe now. Just breathe. The girl blinked slowly, her eyes flickering as if struggling to understand the strange words Leo was speaking. She opened her mouth as though to respond, but all that came out was a series of low, unintelligible sounds. The words were harsh and sharp, unlike any language Leo had ever heard. Her voice was full of emotion, of confusion, and a deep-seated fear that seemed to pulse in every syllable. Leo stepped back, unsure of what to do next. He didn't want to scare her further, but he needed to communicate with her. He had no idea what she was capable of or what she had been through, but one thing was certain, she wasn't from around here. The glow of her skin, the strange language she spoke, the way she moved. She was something different. And that difference filled Leo with both awe and unease. She reached out with a trembling hand, her fingers brushing against Leo's arm. He flinched, startled by the sudden contact, but he quickly regained his composure. She didn't seem to want to hurt him. If anything, she was seeking reassurance. Her eyes locked onto his, and this time, her voice was quieter, softer, though still filled with fear. Where am I? She asked, the words slow and labored, as if speaking was a struggle. Leo's mind raced. He had no idea what she was saying or where she was from, but one thing was clear: she was lost, and he was the only one who could help her. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, the ship's warning system blared through the station. Alert, warning, station collapse imminent. All personnel must evacuate. The blaring sirens made the girl flinch, and she backed away from Leo, her eyes wide with panic. She was shaking, visibly terrified of the noise, and Leo could see her body tense, ready to flee. Wait, Leo said, holding out his hands in a calming gesture. It's okay. I'll get you out of here. Just stay close to me. The girl's eyes darted around the room again, her breathing quickening. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. She was panicking, lost in a world she didn't understand. Leo knew he had to act fast. The station was on the verge of collapsing, and they didn't have much time. But getting her out of here was going to be a challenge. Leo wasn't sure how much longer the station's structural integrity would hold. The last thing he wanted was to be trapped in a dying station with no way out. Stay with me, Leo urged, trying to keep his voice steady. He moved toward the exit, hoping the girl would follow. But she remained rooted in place, her eyes wide and her body tense. The sound of a distant explosion rattled the station. And the girl flinched, her fear growing. Leo's heart raced. They needed to move now. Listen to me, Leo said, walking back toward her. He crouched down to her level, trying to make himself less intimidating. I'm going to help you. I know you're scared, but you have to trust me. If you stay here, you won't survive. Come with me, and I'll get you to safety. The girl hesitated, her eyes searching Leo's face as if trying to find some hint of truth in his words. For a moment, everything was still. Then slowly she nodded. It was a small, tentative movement, but it was enough. Without another word, Leo turned and led the way toward the docking bay. The girl followed, her steps uncertain but determined. As they moved through the corridors of the station, Leo couldn't help but glance back at her. She was still shaking, still afraid, but there was something else in her eyes now, a spark of trust. They reached the docking bay, and Leo's ship was waiting for them. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get them out of here. The ship's engines hummed quietly, ready to take off, but just as they were about to board, the girl stopped, her eyes fixed on something in the distance. Leo turned to follow her gaze, his heart sinking. A figure was standing in the shadows of the docking bay. It was cloaked in dark armor, its eyes glowing a deep, unnatural red. The girl's body stiffened, and she backed away, her fear returning in full force. Leo stepped in front of her instinctively, his hand instinctively reaching for the gun holstered at his side. He had no idea who this person was, but it was clear they weren't here to make friends. Stay behind me, Leo whispered. His voice low but steady. The figure in the shadows stepped forward, its movements smooth, calculated. Its voice was cold, mechanical as it spoke. Give her to us, human, it said. She's not yours to protect. A chill ran down Leo's spine. Who were they? And why were they after this girl? Before Leo could react, the girl spoke, her voice trembling but strong. No, she said, her voice filled with defiance. I'm not going with you. Leo looked back at her, surprised by the strength in her voice. She wasn't just afraid, she was angry too. And for the first time since meeting her, Leo began to understand. This was no ordinary girl. The docking bay doors groaned as they closed behind Leo and the girl, sealing them inside the last safe place on the station. His heart hammered in his chest as he turned to face the figure emerging from the shadows. The tension in the air was thick, and the girl's breath was coming in short, shallow gasps. She was afraid, no doubt about that, but something else had changed too. She wasn't just scared, she was ready to fight. Leo stepped in front of her, his body instinctively blocking her from view. He didn't know who or what the figure was, but the way it moved, smooth, calculated, almost predatory, told him it wasn't here for a friendly conversation. The glow of its red eyes was like the haunting stare of a predator. The figure's voice was low, mechanical, and cold. The girl is ours. Hand her over, human. You've already failed her once. Leo's grip tightened on the gun holstered at his side. His mind raced, trying to think of a way out. The station was about to collapse, but if they stayed here, There was no way they'd survive. And this figure, whatever it was, wasn't going to let them leave peacefully. No. Leo said firmly, his voice steady, though his pulse was racing. She's not going anywhere with you. The figure paused, tilting its head slightly. There was a strange moment of silence, as though it were assessing Leo, weighing his resolve. Then it spoke again, the words like venom. You are mistaken, human. This girl is the last of her kind. She carries the key to something much larger than you can comprehend. You cannot protect her. No one can. Leo's jaw tightened. He had no idea what this thing was talking about, but one thing was clear. This girl was important. More important than anything Leo had encountered in his life. The threat in the figure's voice was real dangerous, but Leo wasn't about to back down now. What do you want with her? Leo demanded. Why are you after her? The figure remained still, its glowing red eyes fixed on Leo with eerie intensity. It said nothing for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Finally, it spoke. The girl is Elyra, the last survivor of Elyra. Her people were wiped out, but not before they created something that could change the balance of the galaxy. She carries the last known piece of their technology. You cannot understand its power, but we do. We will take her, and with her, we will have what we need. Leo's heart skipped a beat. Elyra, that was her name. And she wasn't just some lost traveler or refugee, she was something much, much more. Her people, Elyra, were destroyed, and she was the key to something powerful. Leo felt the weight of it press down on him, but at the same time, he couldn't shake the feeling that this whole situation was much larger than he could ever imagine. As if sensing his confusion, the figure stepped forward, its red eyes burning brighter. You don't understand, do you, human? Elyra is not just a girl. She is a weapon. She is the last hope or the last threat the galaxy will ever know. Her capture is inevitable. You cannot escape this. The girl, Elyra, stepped forward then, her voice trembling but filled with defiance. I won't go with you, she said, her words shaking the air. I won't let you control me. My people died because of you. You won't have me. Leo glanced at her, surprised. Despite the fear in her eyes, there was fire in her words. Elyra wasn't just a scared, confused girl. She had strength in her, a strength he hadn't noticed before. Her determination reminded him of the reason he had decided to help her in the first place. She was more than just a victim. The figure seemed unbothered by her resistance. You are foolish, it said coldly. Resistance is futile. We will have what we're waiting for. Without warning, it raised its arm, and from beneath its dark cloak, a strange metallic weapon slid into its grasp. It was sleek, smooth, and deadly. The figure aimed it directly at Leo, a silent promise of destruction in its glowing eyes. Get down! Leo shouted, grabbing Elyra's arm and pulling her behind a nearby crate, just as the weapon discharged. A bright, blinding light filled the space, followed by the sharp crack of energy striking the metal wall where Leo had just been standing. The force of the blast made the air around them ripple, and Leo felt the heat singe the edge of his coat. Stay here, Leo ordered, pushing Elyra down behind the crate as he drew his own weapon. His mind raced. He needed to buy time. He couldn't take on this thing alone. From behind the cover, he peeked out, taking in the situation. The figure wasn't just an ordinary soldier, it was something more advanced, more deadly. The way it moved, the way it spoke, it was as if it had been built for one purpose: to find and capture Elyra. Leo's eyes flicked over to Elyra, who was trembling behind the crate, but didn't seem as scared as before. She was clutching something in her hand, a small glowing device, pulsing faintly. Leo didn't know what it was, but it was clearly important. What's that? Leo asked, his voice urgent. Elyra looked at the device, her face shadowed with worry. It's a key. It opens something. I don't know exactly what, but I know they're after it. They want it more than they want me. Leo's mind raced. The device. Whatever it unlocked, it was the real prize. The figure had been after her, but now it seemed like it wasn't just her they wanted, it was the key she held. He had to make a choice. There was no way they could fight the figure head-on, not with its weapon, not with the station collapsing around them. Their only chance was to escape. Can you get to the ship? Leo asked. Elyra nodded, though doubt flickered in her eyes. I can try. Good, Leo said, determination hardening in his voice. I'll cover you. Move fast and don't look back. With that, Leo stood, drawing his blaster and firing a shot in the direction of the figure. The figure dodged with ease, but it gave them the moment they needed to brake for the ship. As Elyra sprinted toward the ship, Leo fired again, buying her precious seconds. The figure was relentless, but for now, Leo had one thing on his side: time. The battle for Elyra's freedom had only just begun. The hum of Leo's ship filled the cabin as it rocketed away from the collapsing station. Outside the viewport, the dying station grew smaller and smaller, its lights flickering before disappearing into the darkness of space. Leo gripped the controls, sweat beading on his forehead as his hands moved instinctively, guiding the ship through the chaos of escape. Behind him, Elyra sat in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes locked on the stars outside, her face pale and drawn. The space between them felt vast, even though they were just a few feet apart. Elyra's silence was deafening, and Leo could feel the weight of her past hanging in the air between them, like an invisible force. She had been through something terrible, he could see it in her eyes, in the way her shoulders were tense, the way she occasionally winced, as if expecting danger to strike at any moment. Leo didn't want to press her for answers. He knew it was too soon for that. She had just woken up, had just barely escaped death, and now she was sitting here, a stranger in his ship, a girl who could hold the fate of the universe in her hands. He couldn't push her, but the silence was unbearable. He had to know what was going on, what was really happening. Elyra, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I need to understand. Who are they? Why do they want you so badly? She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes flickered to the controls, as though she were trying to decide whether or not to trust him. Leo didn't press her. He just kept his gaze on the stars outside, giving her space, waiting. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Elyra spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost fragile, as though the words themselves might break apart if she wasn't careful. I am the last of my people, she began, her eyes dropping to her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. The Zalorians. We were a peaceful species. We lived in harmony with our planet, with nature. Our technology was far beyond what most civilizations could imagine, but we used it only for good. We believed in knowledge, in understanding. But then they came. Elyra paused, her eyes closing for a moment, as though she were trying to block out the memories that were flooding back. Leo didn't say anything, didn't even breathe, waiting for her to continue. They were called the Sythians, Elyra continued, her voice growing steadier. A race of conquerors, bent on dominating the galaxy. They wanted our technology, our knowledge. They attacked us, destroyed our cities, killed our people. I was just a child when the war started, but I remember the screams, the fire in the sky. I remember watching my world burn. Leo felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard of the Sythians, everyone had. They were a ruthless, warlike species known for their merciless conquests, but no one had ever heard of them attacking a peaceful world like Zaloria. How did you survive? Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elyra's eyes flicked to him, her expression hardening. I wasn't supposed to survive, she said, her voice cold now distant. I was hidden away by my family, kept in the deepest caves of our planet, while the Sythians hunted the rest of my people. But before they could find me, my parents made sure I escaped. They sent me into space with a ship. And this. She held up her hand, revealing a small, glowing device, a sphere no larger than a fist, that pulsed faintly with a light Leo had never seen before. It shimmered in the dim light of the cabin, casting strange shadows on her face. "This is the key," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "The key to everything." Leo leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "To what? What does it unlock?" Elyra swallowed hard, her gaze turning to the device in her hand, as though she were trying to find the right words. "It unlocks the knowledge, the power that the Sythians were after. My people created it in secret. They knew the Sythians would come, and they built this to protect the galaxy. It's a weapon, one that could either save us or destroy us all. My family didn't want the Sythians to get it, so they sent me away, hoping I could protect it." Leo sat back in his seat, processing what she had just said. His mind was spinning. A weapon. The last piece of Zolorian technology. A weapon that could change everything. And the Sythians? "They're still after you, aren't they?" Leo asked, his voice sharp with realization. Elyra nodded, her eyes clouding over with sadness and fear. "They never stopped hunting me. They thought they could destroy everything, but they didn't count on me escaping. Now they'll do anything to find me again. They'll use the device for their own twisted purposes. I can't let them have it. I won't let them destroy what's left of my people." Leo felt a pang of sympathy for Elyra. She wasn't just running from danger, she was running from the ghosts of her past, carrying the weight of an entire species' survival on her shoulders. But there was something else in her eyes now, something stronger. Resolve. She wasn't going to let the Sythians win. And neither was he. "I'll help you," Leo said, his voice firm. "I don't know what you've been through, but I can't just leave you out here alone." "You're not alone anymore, Elyra." She looked at him then, her gaze softening just a little. For the first time since he'd met her, Leo saw something other than fear in her eyes. There was gratitude there, a glimmer of hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't expect anyone to help me. I thought I'd have to carry this burden alone. But now with you." She trailed off, her voice faltering as if the weight of her own words was too much to bear. Leo nodded, understanding. "We'll figure it out together. We'll find a way to stop them." For a moment, the two of them sat in silence, the quiet hum of the ship their only company. Outside, the stars stretched out in every direction, endless and full of possibility. But for the first time since meeting Elyra, Leo felt a flicker of hope in his chest. The path ahead would be dangerous, filled with enemies and uncertainty. But it was a path they would walk together. And for Elyra, that meant everything. The hum of Leo's ship was a steady backdrop as they made their way deeper into the void of space. Elyra sat at the co-pilot's console, her hands resting lightly on the controls, but her eyes were distant, as though the weight of her past was still pressing down on her. Leo glanced at her from time to time, but he didn't push her to talk. She needed space, and he understood that. For now, their silence was their only comfort, both of them lost in thoughts that weighed heavier than the stars themselves. But the quiet didn't last long. The sudden ping of the ship's radar snapped Leo back to reality. "Warning. Unknown vessel detected. Approaching rapidly." The cold, mechanical voice of the ship's AI made Leo's blood run cold. He stood from his seat, his eyes darting to the control panel. A blip on the radar indicated that someone was closing in on them fast. "I've got it," Leo muttered, reaching for the ship's comm system. His hands moved quickly, but there was a knot in his stomach that he couldn't shake. Whoever it was, they weren't here for a friendly chat. Elyra looked up from her station, her brow furrowed in concern. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice suddenly tight, anxious. Leo hesitated before responding, his eyes locked on the radar. "I don't know. But we're not alone out here anymore." Before he could say more, the comms crackled to life. A deep, gravelly voice cut through the static, filled with a chill that made Leo's skin crawl. "Human ship, this is Captain Varric of the Sythian fleet. You are in violation of space protocol. Prepare to be boarded." Leo's eyes widened, his heart racing. The Sythians. Of course. They had to show up eventually. He should have known the peace wouldn't last, that the Sythians would find them sooner or later. But hearing their captain's voice was like a cold slap in the face. "We're not interested in your protocols, Captain," Leo replied, his voice a mix of defiance and fear. "You can go back to wherever you came from." There was a brief silence on the other end before the voice responded, now laced with cold amusement. "You misunderstand, human. It is not a request." Leo's eyes flicked to Elyra. Her face had gone ashen, her breath shallow. She knew what this meant. The Sythians were here for her, for the key, for the power she carried. They would never stop until they had what they wanted. "Get ready, Elyra," Leo said, his voice tight. "We need to move now." She nodded, though there was fear in her eyes. Leo could see that she was struggling, fighting to suppress the panic that threatened to take over. But despite her fear, there was something else there too. Determination. "Can you navigate us out of here?" Leo asked. Elyra's hands trembled as she manipulated the controls, inputting coordinates, but she remained calm. "I can try. But they're faster, Leo. They'll catch us no matter what we do. We can't outrun them forever." Leo's gaze hardened. "We don't have to outrun them. We just need to survive long enough to figure out what they really want." The ship lurched suddenly, a sharp tremor running through the hull as a blast of energy struck their shields. Leo swore under his breath, his grip tightening on the controls. "Shields are holding, but not for long," the AI reported, its voice strained. "I see them," Elyra said, her voice steady but urgent. "They're locking onto us. Captain Varric is preparing for another attack." Leo's heart raced. The Sythians didn't just want to capture Elyra. They were preparing to forcefully take her from him. To rip her away, no matter the cost. He had to act. "Now, Elyra," Leo said. Turning to her, his voice low but intense. "I need you to trust me. I'm going to make a run for it. You keep the shields up as long as you can. If we're going down, I need you to get us out of their targeting range. Can you do that?" She hesitated, her eyes searching his face. But then slowly she nodded. "I can do it." Leo didn't waste another moment. He yanked the throttle forward, sending the ship lurching into a sharp turn as he punched the ship's engines to full power. The Sythian ship loomed behind them, massive and dark, its guns charging for another blast. The ship's hull vibrated violently as another blast hit their shields, but they held for now. Elyra worked quickly at the console, her fingers flying over the keys as she adjusted the shields, rerouting power to keep them intact. Leo pushed the ship harder, weaving through asteroids and debris, trying to lose their pursuers. But no matter how fast he flew, the Sythians were always one step ahead. Their massive warship closing the gap with terrifying precision. "Incoming fire, Leo." Elyra's voice rang out, sharp with panic. Leo didn't hesitate. He swerved the ship just as a barrage of energy blasts cut through the space where they had been just seconds before. The shockwave rocked the ship, throwing both of them against their seats. "We can't keep this up much longer," Leo muttered, gritting his teeth. "We need a plan. We need an escape." Elyra was pale, her breath shallow. "There's only one place we can go, my people's old home. A hidden base on the edge of the galaxy. It's the only place we might be safe from the Sythians." Leo turned to look at her, his brow furrowed. "You want to go back there? It's a dead zone. They'll be waiting for us." Elyra's eyes locked onto his, and in them, Leo saw something he hadn't expected: hope. "They won't know where to look," she said quietly. "It's the only place we have a chance." Leo didn't hesitate. He gritted his teeth and punched in the coordinates. The ship surged forward, heading toward the unknown. The Sythians weren't far behind, but Leo wasn't thinking about them anymore. All that mattered was getting Elyra to safety. The Sythian fleet would follow. But this time, Leo was ready. He didn't know how or when, but he knew one thing. This fight was far from over. The stars blurred as Leo pushed the ship to its limits. Every vibration in the hull, every flicker of the warning lights was a reminder that they were on borrowed time. Elyra sat beside him, her fingers moving almost mechanically over the control panel, rerouting power and adjusting shields. The Sythian ship was still on their tail, persistent like a shadow that refused to be outrun. They were losing precious seconds, and Leo could feel the weight of it in his chest. "Hold on," Leo muttered under his breath, gripping the controls as they shot through a debris field. He could barely see the outline of Elyra's hidden base, the coordinates she had entered flashing across his screen. They were close, too close, and he knew they might not make it. The Sythians were relentless. They'd been chasing them for hours, pushing them deeper into uncharted space, to a place where no one would think to look. It was the only hope they had left, Elyra's hidden base. A place she hadn't set foot in for years, a place she wasn't sure even still existed. But it was their only shot. The ship jolted again as another blast from the Sythian cruiser struck their shields. Elyra hissed in pain, her fingers pulling back for just a second as the ship shuddered. Leo glanced at her, his heart tightening. The strain was written all over her face, her body tense, but she kept going. She was fighting as much as he was, pushing herself beyond limits that should have broken her hours ago. "We're almost there," Leo said, though it didn't feel like it. The Sythians were closing in, their weapons charging for another devastating strike. Leo's hands tightened on the controls. He couldn't let them get any closer. Not now. Suddenly, the ship's AI interrupted the tense silence. "Warning. Incoming missile lock detected. Evasive action required. Elyra, brace for impact." Leo shouted, his voice rough with urgency. He slammed the ship into a violent roll, twisting and dodging to avoid the missile that was already locked on. The ship screamed through space, barely missing the blast that exploded behind them, rocking the entire vessel. For a moment, there was nothing but the whine of the damaged hull and the distant thrum of the Sythian ship. Leo's heart was pounding in his chest as he fought to stabilize their trajectory. "We have to get there now." Leo shouted again, more to himself than to Elyra. His eyes darted back and forth, calculating their path, watching as the Sythians continued to follow, relentless in their pursuit. Recalculating destination coordinates, the AI chimed. "Base location 10 seconds from current position." A flicker of hope sparked in Leo's chest. 10 seconds felt like nothing in a race against the clock, but it was all they had. He pushed the throttle forward, forcing the ship to accelerate as much as it could without completely losing control. As they neared the coordinates, Leo's heart seemed to stop. The base came into view, half hidden within the asteroid field, its outline barely visible against the dark backdrop of space. It looked like nothing more than a dead relic, abandoned, forgotten. Elyra's people had kept it a secret for so long, and even in their darkest days, they'd managed to keep it hidden from the Sythians. The ship jolted again, this time from a near miss. Leo gritted his teeth, but his focus never wavered. He was almost there. They were almost home. But as they entered the asteroid field, things began to go wrong. "Warning. Asteroid collision imminent. Shields failing." "What?" Leo's voice was sharp with panic. The asteroids were coming too fast, and their shields were already weak from the constant barrage of Sythian fire. "We won't make it," Elyra whispered, but her voice was laced with fear of something else, something deeper than just the immediate danger of being caught by the Sythians. Leo didn't answer. He couldn't. Instead, he veered the ship sharply to the left, narrowly missing an asteroid the size of a small moon. His fingers trembled on the controls, but he refused to give up. "We have to make it," Elyra repeated softly, her voice breaking through his focus. She gripped the edge of her seat, her face pale but determined. "I won't let them find me here. Not here." Leo looked at her, trying to read the depth of her words, but before he could respond, the ship lurched again. There was no avoiding it now. The asteroid field was too dense, and they were too close. Suddenly, a massive rock struck the ship's starboard side, sending it careening into a spin. Alarms blared as the ship's engine sputtered, then roared back to life, though Leo knew they were barely functional. He was running on fumes, and the Sythians were still behind them, drawing closer with every second. Then, in the chaos, Elyra's voice cut through the noise. It wasn't loud, but it was commanding. "The key!" She gasped, her hand clutching the glowing device tightly. "Activate it now, Leo. I have to unlock it. The base will be our last chance." Leo didn't hesitate. He knew what she meant. This was it, the device, the one that had been protecting her people. The key to something far bigger than either of them could understand. With shaky hands, Leo pressed a button on the control panel, activating the ancient system Elyra had mentioned. The ship shook violently again, but this time the shaking felt different. The base ahead of them flickered into view, revealing itself fully for the first time. It wasn't just a hidden outpost, it was a fortress, an ancient structure powered by the very technology Elyra carried. The ship's systems whined, pulling power from the device, fueling the ship's last reserves. It was working. They were going to make it. But even as they neared the base, a cold realization settled in Leo's gut. They hadn't escaped the Sythians yet. They were still chasing them, still locked in pursuit. And that meant the real fight was just about to begin. The ship dropped out of the asteroid field, finally reaching the entrance to the hidden base. But before they could dock, a flash of light erupted from behind them, a blast from the Sythian ship, so close that Leo could almost feel it in his bones. Elyra looked at him, her face set with grim determination. "It's not over, Leo," she whispered. "The Sythians won't stop. Not until they have me. And you." The ship screeched as it landed with a violent thud, the airlock seals hissing as they engaged. Leo slammed the ship's controls to an emergency stop, his hands still shaking from the intense rush of evading the Sythians. Elyra's pulse was fast beside him, her knuckles white as she clutched the armrests. They had made it barely, but it didn't feel like an escape. It felt like the calm before the storm. Outside the viewport, the ancient base loomed in front of them. It wasn't much more than a weathered structure embedded into a hollow asteroid, its surface riddled with the scars of age and time. It looked abandoned, like a forgotten relic. But Elyra had insisted that this was the last safe place. She had spoken of it with such certainty that Leo had no choice but to trust her. The Sythians were still on their trail, and time was running out. Leo turned to Elyra, his face grim, the weight of everything hanging between them. He didn't know what was waiting for them here. He didn't know what kind of secrets this place held. But one thing was for sure, this was no longer just her fight. "We made it," Leo said, though his voice lacked conviction. The words felt hollow because deep down, he knew it wasn't over. The Sythians were relentless. And they were getting closer. Elyra didn't speak for a long moment. She just stared out the window at the base, as if weighing something in her mind. Her hand rested on the glowing device, the key that had caused so much pain and fear. It was quiet now, but Leo could see it pulsing faintly, almost as if it were alive. "I was wrong, Leo," Elyra finally whispered, her voice tight with emotion. She looked at him, her eyes full of uncertainty. "I thought if I came here, if I hid the key, I could protect everyone. But the truth is, I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if there's a future for me anymore." Leo shook his head. You're not alone in this. I told you before I'm with you. We'll figure this out together. We always do. But Elyra's gaze softened, and a distant sadness clouded her eyes. She reached out and placed her hand on the console, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of the control panel, as if seeking some kind of answer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You don't understand. You can't. What do you mean? Leo asked, leaning forward. His mind was racing. Her words sent a chill down his spine. Elyra's gaze remained fixed on the console. My people built the key to protect the galaxy from the Sythians, but they didn't just create a weapon. They created a choice. Leo frowned, not understanding. A choice? She nodded, her voice barely a breath. A choice that could destroy everything. The Sythians aren't just after me, Leo. They want the power inside the key, the power to reshape the galaxy. It's not just a weapon, it's a decision. And I'm the one who has to make it. If I activate it, the key could destroy the Sythians completely. Wipe them out of existence. But... Leo pressed, his heart pounding. What's the catch? Elyra's eyes flickered with an emotion Leo couldn't name. If I use it, it won't just be the Sythians who are wiped out. The energy could destroy everything. The galaxy itself could collapse, everything we know could vanish. Leo's throat went dry as he processed her words. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. This was the kind of choice that could change everything. The fate of entire civilizations, of all existence, was in Elyra's hands. I never wanted this. Leo, Elyra said, her voice shaking. I never wanted to be the one to make that kind of decision. But I have no choice. The Sythians won't stop until they get the key. They'll destroy everything just like they did to my people. If I don't use it, they'll win. If I do... She trailed off, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a thick fog dot. Leo could feel the weight of it too, the pressure of the decision pushing down on him. It wasn't just her decision anymore. She was looking to him, waiting for him to say something. To give her direction, give her a reason to keep going. There was a long silence between them. Leo's mind raced as he tried to find the right words, but nothing seemed to fit. How could he comfort her? How could he tell her what to do when the universe itself was on the line? Finally he spoke, his voice steady but filled with resolve. We don't know what the future holds, Elyra, but I know one thing. You're not alone in this. You never were. Elyra turned to look at him, her expression softening just a little. For the first time since they had met, Leo saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. The flicker that told him she was still fighting, still holding on to the belief that there was something worth saving. You have to make the choice, Leo continued, his voice firm. But whatever happens, we face it together. The Sythians, the destruction, the unknown. We face it side by side. I'm not going to leave you. Not now. Not ever. Elyra's lips trembled, as though she were fighting back tears. But instead of speaking, she reached out and squeezed his hand, an unspoken promise, a silent understanding. She knew that whatever happened, Leo was with her. And that was enough. As the seconds ticked by, the sound of approaching Sythian ships filled the air, breaking the stillness. Leo looked out the viewport, his jaw tightening. The battle wasn't over. The Sythians were closing in, their ships on the horizon, faster than ever. Elyra took a deep breath, steadying herself. The time for decisions had come. I'll do it, she said, her voice now filled with determination. I'll make the choice. But not for the Sythians. Not for anyone else, Leo nodded. For us. For the future. Elyra's hand moved to the key, and with one last glance at Leo, she activated it. The ship trembled, the air around them crackling with energy as the base's dormant power began to stir. Elyra closed her eyes, her face full of concentration as the key hummed with a strange, growing force. Leo stepped back, feeling the electricity in the air, feeling the shift that was happening. The choice was being made. And he knew that whatever happened next, whatever the consequences, the journey was just beginning. The Sythians were still out there, but now, Elyra was ready to face them. Ready to face the universe's darkest threats. With Leo at her side, she wasn't alone anymore. Together, they would shape the future.